Welcome back, everybody. Today we're taking a deep dive into the Book of Joy. It's a conversation between the Dalai Lama and Archbishop Desmond Tutu.
It's such a fascinating book.
Oh, yeah, it is. And it's full of wisdom about finding joy, even when times are hard. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And they present it in such an engaging way, weaving together personal stories, scientific insights, and practical advice.
Yeah, and they do it with a lot of warmth and humor, too, which I appreciated. I think sometimes these kinds of topics can feel a little heavy, but they manage to keep it light and accessible.
Definitely. And one of the things that struck me most was the Dalai Lama's perspective on joy. He doesn't see it as just this fleeting feeling of happiness, but as a way of being, a state of mind that can be cultivated even in the midst of challenges.
Yeah, that really resonated with me too, especially considering his own experiences. Living in exile for over 50 years and still radiating such joy. It's incredible.
It is. And he talks about viewing obstacles as opportunities for growth. Instead of getting bogged down by loss or resentment, he chooses to focus on learning and new experiences.
That's such a powerful shift in perspective.
Right.
You know, instead of asking, why me, he's asking, what can I learn from this?
Exactly. And the Archbishop, despite his own struggles with cancer and witnessing the horrors of apartheid, shares a similar resilience.
He really does. And he talks about the importance of community, how we're not meant to go through these challenges alone.
Yeah. He even uses the word Ubuntu, which in the Nguni Bantu languages means humanity towards others. It emphasizes our interconnectedness and shared humanity.
I love that concept. It's a reminder that we're all in this together.
Absolutely. And that sense of belonging and support is essential for navigating difficult times and finding joy and connection with others.
It makes you think about those times when you feel isolated or overwhelmed and how reaching out to someone can make such a difference.
It really can. But the book also acknowledges that cultivating joy isn't always easy. There are obstacles we all face.
Yeah, like what?
Well, they talk about the concept of mental immunity, which is kind of like our inner resilience.
Mental immunity. So it's like our ability to bounce back from challenges and not let negative emotions completely take over.
Exactly. The Dalai Lama explains that it involves understanding the different states of our minds and learning to work with them skillfully.
So instead of trying to suppress negative emotions like fear and anger, we learn to approach them with a sense of curiosity and awareness.
Yeah, like that story the Archbishop shared about getting stuck in traffic. Instead of getting frustrated, he started using those moments for quiet reflection.
That's such a simple yet powerful example. It's like choosing to respond differently to those everyday triggers that tend to bring us down.
Right. It's about finding ways to shift our perspective and create a more positive experience.
But how do we actually do that, especially when those negative emotions feel so intense?
Well, the Dalai Lama emphasizes the importance of mental training and reasoning.
So using logic and understanding to transform our emotional responses.
Exactly. He gave an example of a student who asked him how to control her anger, and he advised her to consider the harmful effects of anger both on herself and others.
It's like using our rational minds to challenge those automatic reactions and choose a more skillful way of responding. But what about emotions like sadness and grief? Are those emotions that we need to try to overcome in order to experience joy?
That's a great question. And you know, the Archbishop offers a really beautiful perspective on sadness and grief. He sees them as forces that can knit us closer together, reminding us of our shared humanity.
Oh, that's interesting. So he's not saying that we need to avoid or suppress those emotions.
Not at all. He even describes sadness and grief as something that can make us more tender and compassionate.
Wow. I've never thought about it that way.
Yeah. It's like those emotions can soften our hearts and open us up to a deeper level of connection with others.
He even shared that story about the grieving mother who went door to door seeking mustard seeds from a house untouched by death.
Right. It's a powerful illustration of the universality of suffering. It's a reminder that everyone experiences loss and heartache at some point.
So instead of trying to isolate ourselves in those moments of suffering, they're encouraging us to reach out and find solace in our shared experiences.
Exactly. It's about recognizing that we're not alone in our pain.
And that brings us back to the importance of connection, something they emphasize throughout the book.
Definitely. They see loneliness and self-centeredness as major obstacles to joy.
Because those tendencies keep us trapped in our own narrow perspectives, preventing us from experiencing the fullness of life.
Right. It's when we open ourselves up to others that we discover a deeper sense of belonging and joy.
They talk about Nelson Mandela as an example of someone who embodied this transformation.
Mandela's journey is incredible. After enduring 27 years in prison, he emerged as a beacon of forgiveness and compassion, showing us that even in the face of immense suffering, it's possible to choose a different path.
It's such a powerful reminder that cultivating joy is an ongoing process, a commitment to choosing hope and connection, even in the darkest of times.
Absolutely. It's not a destination, but a journey.
So if forgiveness is so key to overcoming obstacles and cultivating joy, how do we actually practice it? What are some of the steps involved?
That's a great question. And it's something that really stood out to me in the book, too, the way they talk about forgiveness.
Yeah, they don't shy away from the complexity of it.
Not at all. It's not about condoning the harm that was done.
Right. It's about choosing to let go of the resentment and anger that keeps us trapped in the past.
So we can move forward with more lightness and freedom.
Exactly. And that freedom allows us to experience more joy.
I think that's one of the key messages of the book, that true joy is only possible when we release those things that weigh us down.
Yeah. And speaking of releasing things that weigh us down, they also talk about the importance of gratitude.
Oh, gratitude. That's a big one.
It is. And it's something that a lot of us struggle with.
Yeah, I know I do. It's so easy to get caught up in what's wrong or what's missing.
It is. But the book really challenges us to shift our focus to what we already have.
To appreciate the good things in our lives.
Exactly. And they even talk about the science behind gratitude. Oh, yeah. How it can literally rewire our brains to focus on the positive.
Right. And reduce stress, improve our well-being, all sorts of benefits.
It's not just some woo-woo feel-good concept. There's actual evidence to support it.
Exactly. So it makes you wonder, why don't we practice gratitude more?
I know, right? It's such a simple yet powerful tool.
And it's something we can do every day.
Absolutely. Just take a few moments to reflect on the things we're grateful for.
It can make a huge difference.
And that brings us to another key ingredient in cultivating joy: compassion.
Compassion. Yeah. That's another big one.
And the way they talk about compassion, it's not just about being nice to people.
It's about seeing the humanity in everyone, even those who have hurt us.
Yeah. The Dalai Lama really emphasizes that, cultivating compassion even for those who we might consider our enemies.
It's a radical idea, isn't it?
It is. But it's also incredibly powerful.
Because it allows us to break free from the cycle of anger and resentment.
And open ourselves up to a deeper level of connection with others.
And that connection is ultimately what brings us joy.
They also talk about the importance of self-compassion.
Oh, yeah. That's a crucial one, too.
Because we can be so hard on ourselves.
We can. But they remind us that treating ourselves with kindness and understanding is essential for extending that same compassion to others.
It's like we have to fill our own cups first before we can pour into the cups of others.
A great analogy. And all of these themes tie back into the 8 pillars of joy that they outline in the book.
The 8 pillars of joy. I love that they break it down like that. It makes it feel more manageable.
It does. And each pillar offers valuable insights into how we can cultivate more joy in our lives.
Like perspective, for example.
Where perspective is huge.
It's about stepping back from our immediate circumstances and seeing the bigger picture.
Right. And recognizing that our challenges, however difficult they may be, are often temporary.
They're part of a larger journey.
Exactly. And remembering that can be incredibly freeing.
They also talk about the importance of humor.
Oh, yes. Humor is essential.
It's an antidote to taking ourselves too seriously.
Exactly. And it helps us to find the lightness and absurdity in life.
Which is so important because, let's face it, life can be pretty absurd sometimes.
It can. And being able to laugh at ourselves and at the situation can make a world of difference.
And then there's acceptance.
Acceptance. That's a tough one for a lot of people.
It is, but it's also incredibly liberating.
Because it allows us to let go of the struggle and resistance.
And to embrace what is.
Exactly. And from that place of acceptance, we can start to find ways to move forward.
It's like saying yes to life, even when it's messy and challenging.
Right. And that's where all of the other pillars come into play. Forgiveness, gratitude, compassion, generosity.
They all work together to create a more joyful and fulfilling life.
Exactly. It's a holistic approach.
And it's not about achieving some kind of perfect state of happiness.
No. It's about embracing the full spectrum of human experience.
The good, the bad, and the ugly.
Right. And finding the joy in all of it.
So with all these pillars in mind, what were some of the practical tips they offered for actually incorporating these teachings into our lives?
Well, they talked about the importance of ritual and routine.
Oh, yeah. Like creating those moments of pause and reflection in our busy lives.
Right. Whether it's through prayer meditation or simply spending time in nature.
It's about connecting with something larger than ourselves.
Exactly. And they also stress the importance of taking care of our physical health.
Yeah, our physical and mental well-being are so interconnected.
They are.
Yeah.
We can't neglect one and expect the other to thrive.
And they gave some really simple yet practical advice, like getting enough sleep, eating nutritious food and exercising regularly.
All those basic things that we know are good for us, but often don't prioritize.
It's true. And they also talked about the importance of mindfulness.
Mindfulness is key.
It's about being present in the moment and aware of our thoughts, feelings, and sensations.
Without judgment.
Exactly. And they mentioned a specific technique called Tonglen.
Tonglen. That's a powerful one.
It's a Tibetan Buddhist meditation practice.
Right. And it involves visualizing, breathing in the suffering of others, and breathing out compassion and loving kindness.
It sounds intense.
It can be. But it's also incredibly transformative.
Because it helps us to cultivate empathy and to connect with our shared humanity.
And they also talked about forgiveness meditation.
Which is?
It involves recalling a hurt that we're holding on to, taking a step back to see it from a distance, naming the hurt and acknowledging the emotions, offering forgiveness to the person who hurt us.
Based on the understanding that we're all human and we all make mistakes.
Exactly. And that we all deserve compassion.
Powerful stuff. And then there's loving kindness meditation.
Loving kindness. That's a beautiful one.
Tell me about it.
It's a practice of extending compassion and goodwill to ourselves and to others.
Starting with ourselves.
Yes. And then gradually expanding outwards.
To loved ones, neutral people, difficult people, and ultimately to all beings.
It's a way of cultivating a more loving and compassionate heart.
And they actually shared a really moving story about their visit to the Tibetan children's village in Dharamsala.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
That was a special part of the book.
It was the Dalai Lama's birthday, and the children had prepared this incredible celebration.
They sang songs, danced, and shared stories about their lives in exile.
And it must have been really emotional for them to be so far away from their families and their homeland.
It was. But there was also so much joy and resilience.
One young woman, Tenzin, shared her story of escaping from Tibet with her grandmother and how she hasn't seen her family in over a decade.
It was heartbreaking. But it was also inspiring to see her strength and determination.
And how did the Dalai Lama respond to her story?
He comforted her with words of encouragement, reminding her of the opportunity she has to study and to contribute to rebuilding Tibet.
It's amazing how he's able to find hope and meaning even in the midst of such suffering.
It is. And despite the somber stories, the celebration ended with a huge birthday cake and a spontaneous dance party.
Even the Dalai Lama got up and danced.
He did.
Yeah.
Well, sort of. He's not actually allowed to dance according to his vows.
Oh, right.
That he still joined in the fun. He did. And it was a beautiful reminder that even amidst hardship and loss, there's always room for joy.
And that joy is a choice.
It is. It's a way of being that we can cultivate even in challenging circumstances.
One of the most practical pieces of advice they offered was about creating a pause between stimulus and response.
Ah, yes. The power of the pause.
It's about cultivating that space between what happens to us and how we react.
Right. Instead of just reacting automatically, we take a moment to breathe, to observe our emotions, and to choose a more skillful response.
It's like hitting the mental pause button.
Exactly. And meditation can help us strengthen that ability to pause.
The more we practice, the easier it becomes to create that space for conscious decision-making.
Exactly. It's like building that muscle of mindfulness.
So that we can respond to life's challenges with more awareness and intention.
Right. And that brings us back to the book's central message. Joy is a practice. It's a way of being that we cultivate through our choices, our actions, and our perspectives.
It's interesting how the Dalai Lama embraces both science and spirituality.
Oh, yeah. He sees them as complementary.
He does, doesn't he?
Yeah.
Not like these opposing forces or anything.
Right. And it reminds me of something he said about scientific findings motivating him to meditate.
Yeah, I remember that.
It shows how he bridges those two worlds.
It does. And it makes you think, you know, could more of us benefit from that kind of approach?
Definitely. I think so. And the Archbishop actually pointed out how science supports the idea that we're wired for connection.
We are. And for compassion.
Yes, exactly. He mentioned how companies that focus on their employees' well-being often have better results.
Interesting. So compassion isn't just some nice to have. It actually makes a difference.
It does. It's not just some lofty ideal. It's a practical approach.
To a better world. I like that. And it really challenges that old idea of success being all about competition.
It does. The Book of Joy encourages us to think differently about success.
Yeah, to see that real fulfillment comes from helping others.
And both the Dalai Lama and the Archbishop really embody that.
They do. Their lives are such powerful examples. They show us what's possible when we align our actions with our values.
And it doesn't have to be about these grand gestures.
Right. It could be about the little things.
Showing up for our loved ones, pursuing our passions, making a difference in our communities.
Exactly. It's about finding our own unique ways to contribute.
And that brings us back to the book's main message. Joy is a choice.
It is. It's something we practice. It's a way of being.
It's not about avoiding the hard stuff.
No. It's about learning to navigate it.
With grace and resilience.
Exactly. And they said it very clearly. The ideal time to start cultivating joy is now.
Now, not later. Not when things are perfect.
Right. Joy is available to us right now in this moment.
I love how they talked about joy being a form of rebellion.
Oh, yeah. That was powerful.
It is. It's like choosing joy in the face of all the negativity and suffering.
It's a way of saying, no, I'm not going to let that define me.
I'm going to choose a different path.
And it's contagious.
It is. When we choose joy, we inspire others to do the same.
Exactly. We create a ripple effect.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into the Book of Joy, what's one thing you hope our listeners take away from this conversation?
Well, I hope they remember that joy is always within reach, even amidst the challenges of life. It's a practice we can cultivate every day through simple acts of kindness, gratitude, and compassion.
Beautifully said. And by choosing joy, we not only transform our own lives, but we also contribute to a more joyful world for everyone.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the Book of Joy. We hope you found it insightful and inspiring.
May you find peace, love, and joy in abundance.
恭喜你又听完了一本书，订阅以便不错过更多精彩节目，也别忘了分享给你的朋友，一起快乐听书学英语。